I am thankful for the experience because it made me into the person that I am today. And I wouldn't trade the woman, the wife, the coach, the minister that I am today. I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world.
Welcome to And Then Everything Changed, a podcast about the pivotal moments in life and decisions that define us. I'm your host, Ronit Plank. Today, my guest is Artisha Bolding. Welcome, Artisha.
Thank you so much for having me, Ronit.
I'm really glad you're here. And today we're going to talk about pretty much the difference between your life in 2018 or right before 2018 and then what happened afterward, which set you on a new course.
Yes.
Would you say that 2018 was the pivotal year?
Absolutely a perfect adjective. It's so appropriate because that was literally the year everything changed.
Can you talk a little bit about, I always find it really interesting to see how people were living prior to the change that occurred for them. So can you give me sort of a background about who you were back then or what was going on in your life? And did you even know that things were not the way you wanted them to be?
You know what? I didn't realize sometimes you have to get to that very low moment when you have no choice but to pivot. It's kind of like pivot or die. I could almost put that on a t-shirt, right?
I love that.
And so I didn't know. I was just going. I come from a long line of very strong, independent, driven women, world-class work ethic. And I was very much a go-getter. Now that didn't change. I still am. But, I pursued my education. I got my master's degree. I was a corporate girl for several years. And in 2018, I had actually, I was approaching 2 years on a construction site. Hard hat, fluorescent vest, the whole deal, right? And that was very different from what I had went to school for growing up. I wanted to be Claire Huxtable. I wanted to be this kick butt lawyer and have this, great husband and all of this. But the job market said differently. So I was at one of the highest paying gigs in my area. I'm in Georgia, as you know, and nuclear power is huge here. So I was on world-class nuclear power construction site, but I was miserable. Again, making a lot of money, but absolutely miserable. I was working 50 and 60-hour weeks with a 45-minute commute both ways. So looking back, I know that I wasn't really living. I was just existing. It's like, wake up, coffee, punch the clock, repeat, really.
What were you telling yourself at the time about what your life was like and about the work you were doing? What was the plan, when you were in this? Because a lot of times I think, I mean, at least for me, it's hard for me to get perspective about what I'm undergoing until later. You just, you may not plan on it being the big picture. And so as your life was unfolding this way, was there something you were telling yourself or did you feel content?
I thought that I was content in some areas, but I was really, really discontented in a lot of areas. I got his permission. I'll say permission, but he knows I talk about this freely. My husband, God bless Mr. Bolding. I wanted to be more financially independent from him. He's always been the breadwinner. And again, from my family background, I didn't like that I had to be, because of what the job market had done with me, I didn't like that I had to be so dependent financially on him. And that actually took a strain, probably more so on my part with our interactions and just how I felt as a woman and a citizen in this country, And so
How long had you been married, by the way?
At that time, we had been married 6 years. This was early 2018, so we were headed into year 7.
Okay, thank you.
And yeah, it was just a very, very trying time. And so I told myself that I needed to make my own money, pull my own weight, and at the same time, I would call my own shots. So for me,
Mm-hmm.
there was a trade off. So, I was going to make my own schedule, whether he liked it or not. I was going to buy what I wanted, whether he liked it or not. And so I was just going to do those things. And I went about kind of checking things off the list. I was planning for girls' trips. I upgraded my car. I was paying down debt. So I was doing those things. And I was also quite secretly planning to leave him. I was just like, if this
Oh,
doesn't get better and I'm actually financially stable the way that I want to be, I'm out of here. This is what
when
I
you
was
when
telling
you
myself.
talk about getting better, what was your? I mean, I'm curious what you think about that now.
Mhm.
Do you feel that there were issues that were not because of you and where you were in your life?
Yes, that definitely played a big part. By the way,
Mm-hmm.
we are still together,
Mm-hmm.
happily married, so excited and thankful that we were able to traverse these tough times. At the time, I felt like he had really checked out.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of our other great trade offs in our marriage was him relocating to the state of Georgia, which is where my family was. Uh, when we first got married, my grandmother had taken ill, and I relocated from Los Angeles to and
Mm-hmm.
took a huge pay cut, like that whole deal. So it's a big circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be closer to my grandmother through what we knew were going to be her final years.
Mm-hmm.
And so he agreed because, we wanted to be together. So he agreed to come here. And to me, without him saying it, I feel like he put his stake in the ground. Like I left my family and my good paying job also
Mm-hmm.
to come here, like you wanted to be closer to your family. And so that's it. So there wasn't a lot of engagement. There wasn't a lot of sharing of feelings. Like we both
Mm.
just kind of um, went into, just kind of going through the motions again, going
Yeah,
to the
I think that's
job and
really common. I mean,
hmm
depending on how you approach relationships and whether or not you, I feel like people in relationships, and you can tell me if you agree with this at all, and you can disagree, of course, but I feel like you either come to a place where you realize, all right, we really have to roll up our sleeves here and do an amazing job in this relationship and be really accountable, or we're going to continue to try to skate by without calling ourselves and each other on what's happening, and those
hmm
don't work out so well in my experience.
Oh my gosh, you hit the nail on the head. Exactly right. And we
Mm.
were in that last category. We were literally just skating by, and it was not, I mean, of course we would have some fun and some things. It wasn't just a complete nightmare, but
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't what I envisioned.
Yeah.
And I'm a woman of faith, and I had seen not necessarily in my blood family, but in my larger community with church members and even neighbors. I had seen successful marriages, and I literally studied. I married when I was older, and so I wanted to be a good wife. I didn't want to um, tear my house down. I wanted to build it
Yeah.
up, fortify it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I had spent time with these women, and I felt like I didn't know maybe everything, but I felt like I had a body of knowledge to move through this correctly. And I just
Mm.
felt like on the other side, that wasn't the case. And that was very, very painful to
Mm.
come to that realization. And at one point, I can't necessarily say exactly what the point was, but at one point, it was clear that we kind of both just stopped doing the work and it wasn't good.
Mm-hmm. I think that happens a lot, and I
hmm
think that for me, I just want to weigh in on this. I feel like for me, part of it was my own, in Yiddish, you'd say mishugas, which is like nonsense, my own
hmm
garbage.
hmm
But part of it was what I learned. And I really feel like some people might get real lucky in the family of origin department where they can see and have modeled for them a really amazing relationship, and hopefully they are able to carry that with them for their own personal relationship. But in
hmm
my case, I didn't see anything like that, and so I had to kind of reinvent the wheel,
hmm
and it was a lot of work.
Yes. Yes. Same here. I had to seek these women out because they weren't in my blood family. And
Mm-hmm.
so I knew there were patterns that I had to fight. And it's kind of like, all women, they get to a point where, you look in the mirror or you kind of look on your life and you say, oh my gosh, I'm turning into my mom. And so when that began happening, I was like, oh no. Of course, there's some things that you want to take. You want to take the great qualities and things like that. But those dark areas, you really have to shine light on and uncover those
Mm-hmm.
so that we don't repeat those cycles generation after generation.
Definitely, definitely, I
hmm
agree with you. Mm-hmm.
hmm
Yeah, so please go on. Okay, I'm sorry. Keep
No,
interrupting you.
you're fine. This is great.
Okay.
And so, when I tell the story, I always say, at the ripe old age of 38, out of nowhere, I became gravely ill. And that's not a dramatic statement, like I was literally
Mm-hmm.
dying.
Mm.
So, the very first time in my entire life that I stayed overnight at a hospital, I had just turned 38, and that was Thanksgiving of 2017. And so, my family and I joked after the fact. They said, you made this first time a whopper, because I was in there for 8 days that very first time,
Wow.
which is crazy. No medical history, nothing. I don't say this to boast, but I have to share that at the time, despite this great paying job, great insurance, I didn't even have a primary care doctor at the time because
Mm.
I was quote unquote young and healthy. I just kind
Yeah.
of never went to the doctor, right? So, they were trying to find out what was wrong, and, misdiagnose after misdiagnosis, all these specialists I went to see. That first time I had double pneumonia. Okay, so literally both of my lungs were filling up and I could not breathe. I thought I was having a heart attack. Like, it was
Mm.
super crazy.
And nothing precipitated it. Everything, like, it went from fine to not fine.
It literally went from fine to not fine. So, there were some little signs the a few weeks prior. So
Mm-hmm.
October, and I've traced this 100 times. So,
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
October, October time frame. I developed a cough, and the people at work are like, "Oh man, are you sick? Don't cough around me, so and so." But I suffer from allergies really bad. And I'm like, no, it's hay fever season, because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any of the head, the aches, none of that. I knew it wasn't a normal cold. I knew it wasn't flu. So I'm like, no, it has to be hay fever. But it just progressively got worse and
Mm-hmm.
worse and worse. And that proceeded through January all the way through May. So I had a total of 4 hospital admissions for 26 days, Ronit. I would be in the
Wow.
hospital through these visits, right?
What did your husband say? What was he doing at this point?
Okay, so get this. This is the crazy part. And this is why I'm just so, so, so thankful for where we are now. I'm a huge believer in practicing gratitude. I'm so thankful
Mm-hmm.
because as the time, now, mind you, I'm getting sicker. I'm
Mm-hmm.
still working a lot of hours because I'm still like money. Like, that's what my
Mm.
mind is on the money. And so I'm like, well, I'm not going to take all of this time off the job. I'm just going to work and take some over the counter stuff. Like, anybody that's listening to this, please, even though I know, we have a lot going on right now, we have to sanitize and mask and everything. But if you feel like you are coming down with something, please just contact your physician. Do not try to self medicate. That is a huge mistake.
Mm.
And
What
I've
were you
read
giving yourself? What were you doing prior to
it.
getting into the hospital? What were you taking? And did
I
you have
mean,
any family around
everything.
you that were
I
saying,
did.
"Hey, come on now"?
But no one, what the my closest tightest circle, somebody probably recommended that I go to a doctor, but I didn't take it seriously because, again, I'm quote unquote young and healthy. I'm like, come
Yes.
on, it can't be that,
It also is
So,
sort of like your lived experiences it sounds like your lived experience has been, I'm healthy and I've always been healthy and that I don't
hmm
even need health insurance. So why would I do that?
exactly. And then, but see, at the time from my job, I had the top health insurance in the state, but I literally didn't use it. It was
Right,
a
right.
card in the back of my wallet. It's so crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I took everything from NyQuil to
Mm-hmm.
Dayquil, Tylenol, cold, Alka-Seltzer, everything that you think of, and a few days it will be okay. But again, it was just progressively getting progressively getting worse. And then I'm getting frustrated because, again, I'm looking at dollar signs, and this is just in my mind equating to me. I'm not even so much concerned about my health as much, because I literally think I'm fine, but I'm becoming more frustrated
Mm.
because I'm having to take time off work. Like, what kind of warped
Hmm.
reality is that? That's so
Which is
crazy.
also really probably bugging you, because then that's interfering with your bottom line and the money you want to make.
Exactly, exactly. And so, totally wrong focus. But not to belabor that part of it. So, you asked what was my husband doing.
Yeah.
So, as the time progressed, as winter was turning into spring, March, I was back in the hospital. In May, at the time, my husband and I weren't actually even living in the same home anymore. So I had,
Hmm.
taken that step, and I just said, this is not for me. But he
Hmm.
never, never gave up on us. I said, I love you. I'll always love you. I want to be friends. And he's just like, no, you're not just going to be my friend. He just was not taking no for an answer. And so the communication was still there, and he had in fact moved back out of state, see, back to his comfort zone.
Hmm.
And when I began to have to present to the hospital, he would drive back and forth. It's about a 7.5 hour drive. He
My
would drive,
goodness.
and he was at my side every time I was in the hospital, every single time.
Hmm.
And the last two most serious times where I actually flatlined, like literally had to be resuscitated, like on my way to heaven, like out of here.
Mm.
It was those last two times that something happened. I think um, the fear of it being so final and actually losing each other, like, just not in
Hmm.
thought, and not I can still
Hmm.
see you on Facebook, but like gone,
Hmm.
done.
Hmm.
I think that flipped a switch in both of us. And it was in March, the very first time that I was in ICU and went into a coma state, that I said, it is clear to me that no one is ever going to love me like this man does.
Hmm.
So I need to, put my big girl panties on and just decide that I'm going to try again and really, really work, because everything to me at that point signaled that, okay, something has changed in him too.
Hmm.
And this is something worth saving.
Hmm.
And I'm just really, really pleased that we have both. This is now going on 3 years later.
Hmm.
We are being consistent, checking in with each other, and it's just working. And I say that he and I are both two different people. I feel like we both coded, and a new relationship, a new husband, and a new wife resurrected out of that situation.
Can I ask you, did your family, your closest family, because I think in an earlier conversation, you and I talked about how you did have extended family around you. And I want to say nieces. Is that right? You had some nieces in your
Mm-hmm.
life?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So did your family like him? They like Mr. Bolding? Were they fans of his?
Yes, and I say that very sassily because I feel like if it were some recruiting activity or something, I feel like they would choose him over me. Like, they love him. It actually gets on my nerves how much, like, they will bake things for him, cook things for him, birthday and Christmas. And I'm just like, I am the relative here. What is happening with you folks?
That's
It's really
hilarious that you said a recruiting activity. Like, in what shape, on what planet would there be like a recruiting situation for both of you? But that's really funny. Like, I get what you're saying, and I
I
know,
was going to
like,
say the purge, but I didn't want to be too morbid. But it's just like, if they had to choose one, like, okay, you can only keep one, I really think they would keep him.
that's hilarious. Oh my goodness. So, like, okay, so I have to ask you then, when you guys got back together and
Hmm.
you're working on your relationship
Hmm.
and you can see how much your family loves him, does that mean that you had to look at really like what your own patterns were before then? I mean, did you have to do that whole shakedown of yourself and realize, whoa, I made a lot of mistakes?
Yes, yes, and Ronit, it's an ongoing. Marriage is the hardest work
Hmm.
you'll ever do. But I also say it is the absolute most rewarding because
Hmm.
no level of success that you achieve is worth anything if you don't have someone to share it with. And it's fine to share it with mom and nieces and all of that, but when you have someone that you can say you love, you built a life with, to share that with, is nothing like it. So
Hmm.
even to this day, I go back and I ask myself one of the arguments. So year one, I always say too that the honeymoon period is a myth.
Mm.
Everyone doesn't get one, and I
Interesting.
didn't get one. Whoever we want to point the finger at, probably more so me. I didn't get one, and one of our early arguments, year
Hmm.
one, was for whatever dumb reason I can say now, I
Hmm.
refused. I hated him playing his video game with the whole console and cords everywhere in the living room. I don't. It's looking back now, it's so not a big deal.
Mm.
I definitely would prefer the living room to the bedroom, but I don't know. I was just like, nope, don't have that thing plugged up in here. I want to be able to walk freely, and it was a big blow up. So silly.
Mm, when you
So.
look back on it now, but do you think that, I mean, I feel like I'm doing a leading question, but don't
Mm-mm,
you think it has something to do with something else? Like it's not, and I say this from my own experience, like you look
mm-hmm.
back on how angry you were, because I can think of those moments in my marriage too, my earlier marriage. And I'm like, what the heck was wrong with me? Like, what was I crazy about? Right? Because it's not
Yes.
about that, it's something
Mm-hmm.
else often.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think a big part of it is one thing that I've drilled down to is having been brought up by a really authoritarian parent and just really being kind of an authoritarian person in my household as well,
Mm.
and not taking a minute to say, okay, literally there's no I in team. Like there's a we now. It's not just me. It's not just what I want, my level of comfort and convenience, and doing the team effort and talking through things. I think it was just kind of like, no, this is my way. This is the right
Yes,
way. Who is this guy that doesn't know the
exactly.
right way to do things, you know?
But that's kind of what I was saying about the learned behaviors we have. And if people
Hmm.
don't, if we don't fix it or look at it, and that's not to say that sometimes we should be really irritated with, people that we're in partnerships with. I mean, they're not
Yes,
always right either. That's not what
that's
I
right.
mean at all.
That's right.
But I'm saying when we're so caught up about something, sometimes it really is us. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, we have to look at that.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. This whole experience has made me, and I prided myself prior to of being the woman that is pretty good on taking self inventory, checking in, and making sure that I'm doing my work. But marriage and then a health crisis paired with a marital crisis, whoa! It made me
Yeah.
go to levels of self evaluation that I never even thought.
Are you happy that you went through the health crisis then?
I hate to say that. I can't believe you asked me that. I hate to say
Wait,
that
do you think about it sometimes or is
all
it
the
because?
time, all
Oh,
like
okay.
literally all the time. And I say it like this, it absolutely did not feel good. It totally sucked. But
Mm.
I am thankful on this other side of it. I am thankful for the experience because it made me into the person that I am today. And I wouldn't trade the woman, the wife, the coach, the minister that I am today. I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world.
Interesting. It's hard. It's hard. I mean, I hear that a lot with my guests. I mean, sometimes you would never take back a loss to get to where you are with growth. A personal loss or losing someone. But there are people I've talked to a lot on the show who are grateful for these really hard times, and that's the
Yes.
most astounding part of it.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I know we have a lot more to dig into, but do you have any long lasting health consequences because of what you went through?
Yes, so I am still on some very strong heart medications.
Mm.
that I'm told I'll have to take for the rest of my life. But I challenge that. I challenge that
Mm-hmm.
all the time because,
Mm-hmm.
again, I'm still that go getter. I'm still that, I'm not just going to take no for an answer, girl. Um,
Mm.
and so at the height of this, with get this 24-hour oxygen support. So I was going into congestive heart failure and respiratory failure.
Mm.
That was the whole deal. It presented as bronchitis and pneumonia, but once they started to dig around, they really found out that there were greater issues in my heart and lungs.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the time with the 24-hour oxygen support, I had to have 8 medications, and I'm counting oxygen as a medication.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm so thankful now that I've been able to whittle that list down to about 3, and I am
Mm.
in negotiations with my doctor uh,
Mm.
to change that. But and so with a heart condition, everything changes. So I am on a very restricted liquid intake. Currently, I don't have so. Folks may or may not know this. My health gurus in your audience will know this. Like a lot of your leafy greens and other foods produce fluid, and some folks who have gone into renal failure have to really manage that. Currently, my diet, I don't have so much of the food restrictions besides, keeping the low sodium, but I
Mm-hmm.
have a very highly restricted liquid intake. 67 ounces per day is my limit.
Mm.
And when the doctor first told me that, I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I'm the person that you would think I'm a mom. I have fur babies, but I don't have any birth children. But like,
Mm.
I always have snacks and drinks in my purse. I always have a large purse.
It's kind of
I
like
always have,
me.
yeah, I like always. So that to me, hearing that was devastating. I was like, there's no way, I'm throwing back, sodas, smoothies,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Again, we're over 2 years into this now, and daily I probably max out at about 40 ounces. Like on a good day, I don't intake 40 ounces of fluid, which is crazy, but
Mm. So
um,
are you saying that you have long lasting, so your the areas of weakness in your body or in need of extra care are your heart
mhm,
and did you say your kidneys?
my lungs,
Your lungs and your heart.
my lungs and
And,
my heart.
and so those are always something you have to kind of be aware of. Is that right?
Yes, and so it's a lot of risk for the fluid retention. So
Mm.
that's why I have to really, really be careful, with my intake as far as my diet. I've been able to adjust. It's always mind over matter, and it's cliche, but it's so true. What you focus on will grow. What you pay more attention to will be magnified in your mind. So I choose to be grateful that I'm still around because I
Mm-hmm.
literally almost wasn't. I
Mm.
choose to pour wisdom into other wives who have struggles like I did,
Mm.
to other ladies who are looking to actually transition either out of corporate or do career changes. So I pour my time into that, and I almost don't have time to pay attention or wallow in the fact that I can't eat and drink as freely as I could, or I have
Mm-hmm.
to take medications, or my physical activity is greatly reduced. I'm just so thankful to still have more time to make an impact with my life.
Yeah.
So I don't worry about these other things.
Right. It sounds like you choose not to give it too much room.
Hmm.
Right. So you had said to me in an earlier conversation that when your world blew up, that you had been forced to spend more time with yourself, like with who you
Hmm.
were. And
Hmm.
so, do you feel like you can talk just a little bit about what parts of yourself you didn't like that you discovered?
Yes, I didn't like that classic fight or flight. I had become, and I, grew up in a neighborhood where, sometimes you had to fight. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't an area where you could fly. But I realized that more often than not, when things got tough, and you can read tough as didn't go my way, I checked out. I was out. I had to really spend some time working on the whole idea that, I had become a fleer and abandoner, and realizing after some digging, some work, some counseling, realizing that I myself had suffered from abandonment issues. My mom was a single mom. I'm the
Mhm.
baby of the family. My brother and sister are 12 and 13 years my senior. So the
Mm.
story that I had been telling myself about me having to be strong and me having to call the shots and no one was going to take advantage of me and things like that. On the face of it, on the very shallow level of it, it's nothing wrong with those ideas. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be a strong woman. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be independent. There's nothing wrong with wanting your voice heard. But as you said, Ronique, what is really driving that? What's your intention of that? So I had to look at, through this whole process, both of my hearts, my spiritual heart as well as my physical heart. And
Mhm.
so while the doctors were prescribing medication to try to, clear up and treat what was going on in my physical heart, I had to really do the soul work and really look spiritually and try to understand how I could clean up my intentions and what were happening spiritually with my heart. And so it's been a great experience, and and like I said, I still have to check myself because sometimes something ugly will fly out of my mouth. And I love my husband so much because
Mhm.
he's not a quick responder like me. I'm like, if you say something, I'm right back at you. Like, we can go toe to toe. But he is a
Yeah.
processor. He doesn't immediately respond. And he's very careful to do that because he's always intent to respond, to get clarity, and to respond from a place of love. And I love that about him. So if I say something stupid, he'll give me a few seconds and I'll be like, oh, I'm like, rewind, pretend like I didn't say that. And he just laughs. Like, he literally laughs. He knows that I have, a crazy tongue sometimes. So,
Well, so are you saying, I have to ask this because I once talked to someone who said that people in relationships, when I was in my own search, that people in relationships, and I mean search for emotional growth and,
mhm,
feeling better,
mhm,
that people in relationships find partners who are at the same emotional level as them. So often when, at least in the beginning before there's evolution, so
mhm.
you can complain about your partner all you want and about how much better you are, but generally speaking, you have found your match in
Come
terms
on.
of maturity and how they play and everything.
Yes,
And so,
yes.
do you feel like is he a step ahead of you when it comes to his being in touch with emotions, or is he at the same place as you?
I feel like we are totally yin and yang. We are a great balance, just almost with everything in the house. Well, I'm more of a spender. He's more of a saver. I'm kind of loud and boisterous. He is, a little more reserved. We balance each other out. The thing about, 2016 and 17 versus today is we meet in the middle. We take
Mm-hmm.
the time to talk through what we're going on. And so I don't fault him for anything that he's feeling or being more reserved. Like those first 2 years, again, why we didn't have much of a honeymoon period is
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a talker, I'm a spiller, dumper, expresser, and he's an empath and he's
Mm.
not very expressive. And I took that personally. I'm just like, why won't this dude talk to me? Like, he bought me this crazy expensive ring, uprooted his life. Like, what is the deal? And in my callousness, again, drawing on this bloodline of mine, I'm just like, well, if he's not going to act right, then he could just leave. And I, in my mind, I would say these things so
Yeah,
early
yeah,
on,
yeah.
and
Which
it's
is
so
really
sick.
just, I mean, it's like a armor, right? I mean, can I
Yes.
say that? Because I feel
Hmm.
like I know I didn't live your experience, but I'm not unfamiliar with some of what you're talking about,
Hmm.
personally. And so I feel like it's just a way to protect ourselves.
Yes, it is totally a defense mechanism. And when you realize that, when you get to the point of awareness and bravery where you can say it out loud, it loses power. It loses power because now you have to be accountability, because now you can't say you don't know, because you're well aware now. So it's, what are you going to do with that information? Are you willing to change? And again, another cliche, are you more concerned with being right, or are you more concerned with being happy? I choose happy all day. And guess what? Because I can talk to myself and I can talk to my girls, and I'm going to be right to myself and I'm going to be right to my girls. But I have to learn how to sometimes just shut up in the house. And that is a lesson that I teach all my women. I don't necessarily, I shouldn't say this because I've transitioned into being sort of a relationship coach. I'm more purpose discovery, so many women, I'm talking about all over Instagram, everywhere, reach out to me as far as relationship coaching. And a big thing that my two top things that I tell them, believe it or not, is, and trust me, I am a feminist, so feminists, don't beat me up here, but two things for a successful relationship and household that we as women, especially strong, independent women, have to learn how to do is, number one, don't take things personal, because men are really just kind of trying to make it, trying to do what they need to do to satisfy their own needs. And sometimes it has absolutely nothing to do with us. I had to learn that. Like 9.9 times out of 10, it has absolutely nothing to do with you. And then the other thing is that you have to be willing to be quiet sometimes. And in that quiet time, you can't just analyze his behaviors. You have to analyze yours. And it is not going to be helpful to anyone to say everything that comes to your mind or to your heart. Take some time, ponder those things. And again, there's nothing wrong with talking it over with a confidant before you bring that to your mate. And, more often than not, you have to let cooler heads prevail. And then it's just like, okay, now we can have a meaningful conversation around this. So I've had to work through all that.
And, I heard a version of this, which is what you're saying reminds me of this, which is what I heard from someone I was working with a long time ago was, this is not a time for action. That you can feel chaotic inside and you can feel like you need to do something, but it's not always a good time to actually take action, right? It can be a time to ruminate and think and mull it over and let that urge pass, and then figure it out when you're calmer.
Yes. Yes.
So what do you think of the person you are now?
I love this chick, man. I mean, I was a pretty good fan of myself prior, but I love this new creature that I've become. The lenses through which I view the world are completely different. And it's nothing like facing death that really makes you appreciate the sanctity of life and nature, family, love, joy, all of those things. And being able to practice gratitude, not on a shallow level, but be really internally thankful, to have a presence in the world. I'm so grateful that people want to hear my story. People want to take my counsel and coaching. It literally brings me to tears almost daily just thinking about it. I'm so thankful. And I mean, I did a complete 180 from corporate, making someone else wealthy and me being miserable, right? Because it's not all about dollar signs, but I have wealth and riches spiritually and internally because I know that I'm making a lasting impact in the world. So it's not always about income. For me, it's more about impact now. And I absolutely love that.
So can you talk a little bit about where people can find you and how we can learn more about the work you do?
Yes, absolutely. Folks can visit my website, which is my name, artishabolding.com, ArtishaBolding.com, artishabolding.com. And It's all of my socials are public. I love to hear from folks. So please send me a friend request. Hit me up on Facebook. I am, my handle is Artisha Bolding. And on Instagram, it's artisha.bolding. So I would love, love, love to share with folks. If folks, want to talk about relationship issues, if they want to talk about near death experiences, nothing's off the table with me. So I'm very, very
Mm-hmm.
open.
Great. Thank you. And do you have a podcast?
How could I forget? We're just embarking on season 3. I can't even believe it. Bold Journeys podcast, and Journeys is spelled with 2 Z's, and those 2 Z's, Ronit, represent the 2 times that I went into a coma, and also 2 important holidays that I missed with my family through this health crisis. I told you about Thanksgiving. The other one was that following Easter I missed too. So Bold Journeys with 2 Z's on all major platforms. I did a bonus episode for a 2020 countdown, and we are coming back with season 3, talking all things relationship, current events, and purpose.
Is there anything else that I didn't ask you about, or that you want to touch upon that I didn't pay any attention to? Or do you feel like we covered your mission?
My primary mission now is to ensure that women and entrepreneurs are no longer stuck in life, but thriving in success that's aligned with their passion and purpose. I motivate them to birth business books and brands. So that's what I talk about when I talk about career changers, girls that are transitioning out of corporate, and even ladies that are looking to do startup businesses. So that's my thing. I don't want anyone to have their potential be buried and go to the graveyard with them. I want them to give their gifts freely to the world. So that's my day-to-day job. That is my mission. And I focus on women and entrepreneurs specifically. So I did want to share that.
Yeah. Well, I love your energy, and I'm really happy we connected. It's been so fun to talk with you, and I love your sense of humor. And I think I do get that sense that really you talk about what's really happening, and you don't pull any punches, but you're also warm about it and nurturing about it. So that must be really good to work with.
Thank you. Such a huge compliment, Ronit, and it's been my pleasure. I'm so glad we connected as well. I appreciate the work that you do, and your show is really, really something that's needed in the world. They say, okay, there's so many thousands of shows, but there are shows that make an impact, and that they're going to help someone at whatever stage they're at. And I think that's your show. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to And Then Everything Changed. For more on this episode, photos, and other episodes you might like, please visit atecpodcast.com. You can connect with me and learn more about episodes on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram also. Just search for my name, Ronit Plank, RONITPLANK, and you will find all the updates. If you like this podcast, please remember to subscribe and also rate and review so other people can find it. Thank you so much for listening.